Hi, I'm Lorenzo and you're watching A Mission a Day. Today's episode 37 and this comes right on the tail of yesterday's episode where we launched the Vol station, now the interplanetary spaceship, to Rumble Rumble Vol. It's on its way. Let's see if we can find it in the map view. This is not currently what we're looking at. Let's see if we zoom out. Here it goes. The Vol station just recently launched, on its way to intercept Jool over there. Now, if you watched yesterday, you know that we are sending another thing. And that's this one, this bit, one half of the shown spacecraft here. This will also go to Vol to land there with Bill or Bob, who are aboard the Vol station. Now this other bit, if you are a regular viewer, you will recognize it as the Kethane mining and refining unit stomping around Minmus all the time. If not, that's what it is. And welcome. Hope you watch this video, like it, and watch all the others. Right, so we're going to undock that. We don't need to bring the miner with us. All we do need to bring with us is this lander. It came here for refueling, and that's what it got. It's got full fuel tanks, and it's ready to go to Vol. Now, we're in a bit of a hurry because the optimal launch window is like 6 or 7 days past. That's because we needed that time to launch the space station, the interplanetary ship, and of course the refueling, the mining, the rendezvousing also took approximately a day. I didn't keep exact track, but about a day. Before I'm going to set up this maneuver node, I'm going to hope that we will manage to get away from this miner without breaking it. I'm going to go for a slight thrust, and that strut is just not scraping off the solar panel. Great. It's really good to be able to do these rendezvousing operations without massive frame rate lag. That's the upshot of having small vessels. I made this station a little bit too large. Right, now we want to launch in the direction of Jool. Now Minmus is in a terrible position for that. We have momentum this way and we want to go the other way. So either it's going to cost us a lot of delta V, or we have to wait for like 10 days until we're around here. Now I already said the launch window is a bit late, so we are not going to do that waiting 10 days bit of the plan. No sir. What we're instead going to do is fall down near Kerbal and get some extra efficiency out of our engine burn that way. Now, I talked about this yesterday and then I opted to not do it because the interplanetary ship was large and required a long burn, which would make any such trajectory rather imprecise. Now this ship is a lot smaller, should require a much shorter burn only, so we can drop down into Kerbal's gravity well for a very welcome efficiency boost. So we're going to go down rather low, make that about here, and if we have a look at what our ejection angle is going to have to be, that's just about perfect. Then we can swing around and start burning for Jool. So we're going to do this burn. Let's see where that node is at. That's about, if we remember our delta V figures from yesterday, it's about 120 meters per second from here to save about 5, 6, maybe even 700 meters per second of delta V to the Jool insertion burn. So apart from saving delta V, we are saving precious time, which we need to make our launch window. So today we are proper rocket scientists thinking about the mission plan and hopefully optimizing it a little bit. Now this might just be me being a braggart. We'll have to see if this actually works out. So we have a 22-second burn coming up. Let me do that right now. Well, first aim the ship the proper way, of course. There we go, lighting the engine, and we are on our way. Now, as was customary yesterday, during the burns it's always nice to talk a little bit about the plans. Well, the plans for today have been laid out pretty decently, I would say. So all that we have left to reflect on is indeed the future. It was recently announced that the .23 update for Kerbal Space Program will be released on Tuesday, the 17th of December, which is in a few days. And if you hadn't heard yet, well, there you go. That's the planned release date for 4.23. And while I'm not privy to the to all the details, it is I do know that optimizations are a big part of that. So hopefully the space station, the interplanetary ship, will be optimized a little bit so I can play it a little more effectively with a bit higher frame rate. But as updates are always a little bit uncertain in what will be supported and what will not be, I'm going to try to finish, or at least satisfactorily continue, vol operations before 0.23 hits, so that if the save game gets invalidated, it's not too much of a pity and we can start with some fresh projects. Now, what will we do in the future? There are a few things I want to do. I want to obviously finish mucking around with vol. I want to land people there. I want to make a base, maybe plant a flag, and definitely return some soil samples to, you know, do science and all that. But once that's done, I'm looking towards the future with 0.23 and maybe some mods to to make things a little bit more interesting. Well, I was thinking about if the save, if 0.23 keeps the save game compatible, I'm obviously going to continue playing in this save, and I'll probably roll the dice again to select a new target of interest. For those of you that have not been with us from the beginning, what I did originally was roll a dice, and the outcome of that would decide which celestial body would get the prime focus in the missions, and that turned out to be Vol, one of Jool's moons. So we could do that again with a different target, and then see how we could get there or around there with our current space program. Or we could, that's probably something that I'm going to do should this update break things. What we can do is start fresh with the new career mode, but install some mods to make it interesting. There's the KSP Interstellar mod that gives you some more advanced propulsion, and I've been thinking of installing it with this install. But what that does, at least what worries me in that, is that it gives you basically more powerful engines, more efficient engines, interesting ways to become better at rocketry. But that would make the game in its current state rather easy, I'd say, because the solar system is already quite small, and the new highly advanced propulsion methods would just make getting anywhere a breeze. So if I'm going to do that, I'm probably going to combine that with the real solar system mod, which, as the name implies, scales up everything to realistic sizes. So then we would start at the bottom of the career tree with realistically sized planets, and then we add the advanced propulsions, which could be unlocked after enough research. I think that would then again be interesting enough to warrant a videotaped playthrough. On the other hand, those are the things I'm thinking about. Things like Ferrum Aerospace, Deadly Reentry, those kind of difficulty mods that increase a little bit of realism, add a bit of challenge. Those will definitely still be used, because I like that. That makes the game a little bit more interesting. For now, though, no need to worry too much. Where am I? Is this? Oh yeah, I'm planning my burn at the orbit of the moon. That wasn't quite apparent to me when I planted the maneuver node, so we're throwing away most of our O-Birth effect bonuses, but then again we are saving the time. I had a look at the map view, and this unmanned lander, probably because the launch window has passed by about 10 days now, is not going to arrive before the Vol station. It's in fact arriving several months after it. This means that our mission plan will be inverted. First the interplanetary ship will arrive, and then when that's there and settled, then this lander will come careening into the system, which can then be used, if everyone is still alive, to land on Vol. And that, if everyone's still alive, will of course be a big question mark, because our pilots are the intrepid Bill and Bob. They have not always been alive. No one's ever always been alive, but you know what I mean, they don't always survive their missions. Right, so we're currently on the gas for burning to Jool. 2000 meters per second delta V remaining. It's not a 20-minute burn as it was with the interplanetary ship, but it's still a 6-minute burn. So I'm going to leave you here. This has no way at all to go wrong. The famous last words of everyone that ever failed. But this is probably not going to go wrong, and I will see you at the interplanetary ship as it is approaching Jool, because we will finish this burn, switch to this one, time warp forward a year, and see how we get on at Jool. So see you later, much later, a year, got down to a second or two. And it's now almost a year later, and we are coming on our Jool encounter. 70 more days, translating to roughly 60, 70 more seconds. So in about a minute we should be there. We can see here the Vol Explorer 2 is on its way. It is actually has a higher apoapsis than our Vol station, and is slated to encounter Jool here. This is all due to a slightly different ejection angle, and of course a different launch window that this has caused. This had to go to this higher orbit to reach Jool there, because it's spending a lot of time there. Now, if you remember, we left a Vol Explorer, in fact the number 1, in Jool orbit, and that is no longer there. It is currently here. It has been flung out by one of the moons, presumably, and that has happened in the past 3 or 4 years even. So I had commented that I wasn't quite sure how stable that was, and indeed it has proven to be unstable as all hell. Look, here we're coming up on Jool, and observant viewers, well done to you, have noticed that we are in fact on a collision course with it. Now, I left it like that. I almost couldn't believe my eyes when I made that rendezvous from way out near Kerbal. I didn't show you that, but it went great. And we are on a collision course now, and we're just going to tweak that so that we are going to pass by Jool and this time get into orbit in the correct plane, and of course establish our apoapsis just, our periapsis just a little bit over the Julian atmosphere, so we can make our braking burn most effectively. As you might imagine, we are not in fact going to perform a aero braking maneuver. This craft is far too precious for that, and I think these moons should be in a clockwise rotation around Jool. We are going to observe it in time acceleration just to confirm that. Let's see, where are they moving? No, they're actually going in a counterclockwise direction from here, so we have to join them in that direction. So we're going to plant a maneuver node and try and make that happen. Please, can I have a maneuver node? Game, please give me a maneuver node. Why won't the game give me a maneuver node? Okay, so the frame rate isn't so great, I understand, but I would appreciate a maneuver node. I will be right back. I'm going to reload the game. There we go. Back down to Jool. Now rotating it so we are in the plane of these moons, and this is actually Tylo, so that's not the right one, but we don't care about that. We want our periapsis down low in the same plane. Look, if we do this, we get catapulted down out of it, but that's fine. Our periapsis will be 7,000 kilometers. That's great. Now we're just going to time accelerate a little bit to confirm again if our target moon of Vol, that is this one, is rotating in that same way, because we made that mistake once and we're not going to do it again, and it is looking fine. So with some craziness, I have no idea why, probably because this trajectory is going through the center of Jool or something and making the game go crazy. Because of that, something was apparently very difficult. We're going to time warp 20 hours into the future and there perform our burn. And it's a historic burn because it will save this crew, because without the burn it's going to crash into Jool. Isn't that a happy announcement? First of all comes a little bit of tedium, that is aligning the ship with the planned burn vector with no RCS controls. And I'm not going to subject you to this. What I am going to do in the meantime is of course run some science experiments, and we have done the mystery goose, the material base and stuff before, but we are going to do it again because we want those science points. And what we haven't done here, because how could we, is crew reports, because we never had crew here before, and we're going to ask, well, whoever's in the command pod for a crew report. You watch the flowing green storms below. They seem to go on forever, endlessly swirling into each other. Great, 35 points, but those 35 points can be transmitted for 100%. After all, they're just words spoken by the crew. We have 2 crew, so I can ask for 2 reports. Let's see, 13 points for the second one, not quite as profound, but still welcome. So this mission is already doing some science. Of course, the main science goals are to plant flags. Well, planting flags not really a science goal, I don't think, but to put boots down on Vol, get reports, get ground samples, leave the flags, and then somehow, some way, return those samples to Kerbal, because that should be, well, that's the epitome of success, I dare say. And if we have any fuel left, we can use the robotic lander. It has a nuclear engine, it's light, so that should be able to make the trip back. I'm thinking this ship possibly will have enough Delta V to make it back, but if we spend some of that puttering around the system here, it might not. Also, it's very tedious to fly, so unless 0.23 improves that a bit, I am looking to leaving this around Vol. The probe might make it back with some data but not samples, and this excursion module might go somewhere with one of the pilots, but the bulk of it will probably remain in Vol or at least Jool orbit. So there's that, but that small lander that we launched this morning, earlier in this mission actually, that is perfectly fine to go on. So looking at 140 meters per second burn, I'm going to time warp. I will see you. Oh, whoopsie, whoopsie, whoopsie. Time warping way too fast past that moment. It was only a few minutes that we had to warp for, nothing more. We're 3 minutes past that node, but we're still very far out, so I'm hoping that the node is still valid. It is not very far off, so I'm not going to cut. We're going to do the burn, and then we will see what our trajectory looks like. The space station, the ship is not quite as steady as it was before, but still I am pleased with the way how it is going in the direction I'm pointing it and not anywhere else, which is of course how every spaceship should behave. Right, 10 more meters per second, and disconnecting the throttle now. And those arms can bounce back. And that simulation is what's taking up all my frame rate, so that's good to know at least. Well, look at that. Our actual trajectory is even better than the projected one, because now we are not being catapulted out of the system, we are merely being boosted further into it. So, phase 1 of Jool capture has been completed. Wow, Jool has been slightly scanned for Kethane. I'm not thinking Jool is mineable, but we'll see about that. Okay, so now we have to make our move to a capture burn. And we are going to plan that roughly at the orbit of Vol, of course. So, what's that? What's that? Is that a Vol encounter already? A Tylo encounter. We don't want the Tylo encounter. We are in it for the Vol encounter. So this is Vol, this is the burn, 900 meters per second. That should easily be attainable. So I'm going to time warp until that burn, and I'll see you there. See you in a little bit. So here we are at the last hard burn, I think, for this vessel. 900 meters per second should easily be possible. Let's ask the engineer plugin how much Delta V is left in our ship. It says we have 2500 meters per second left, and I think that's not counting this tank, not counting this tank. It's probably counting this tank because that is currently being drained, and it might not count this tank. So we could have a little bit more, but we won't have a huge... Wait, is all of this depleted? No, it's not. I don't know why it's currently sipping from this one. That's something in the fuel logic where it did drink these before it drank this. but then it moved on. I have no idea why that's happening, but anyway, we have plenty of fuel. As long we can expend about 1500 meters per second to get into an orbit around Vol, which should be more than enough. So we're going to put this one in orbit, and then we can start mesmerizing, thinking about what missions to do with all the hardware we have now in Julian orbit. Of course, as I said before, Bill or Bob is going to go down in this module, is going to sample Jool's atmosphere, a daring mission. Absolutely one of the most daring missions undertaken so far, but the mission controller demands it, so we are going to do it. Once the automated lander gets here, we will use that for a landing on Vol. In the meantime, we can scan Vol for Kethane. Currently we didn't bring any mining equipment, but here this electricity module does have the scanners, so we can start a Kethane map of Vol. We'll probably put the station in a fairly high orbit of around 1000 kilometers so that it can cover a lot of ground, and it would be wouldn't be as expensive on the Delta V to incline that orbit so we can cover a broad area of the planet. So that's what we're going to do in our first weeks or even months there. What we have as well is a small ion-powered probe, and we are going to use that to at least visit all of the other moons in the system here. It doesn't carry a full science payload, but it does carry a gravioli scanner, so we are at least going to do gravity scans of all the moons in the Julian system. This module here, this has space for crew, so I think before dipping into Jool's atmosphere, that's going to make a mini grand tour of the Julian system, visiting all the moons, writing the crew reports, and sending back that data just to get all the science done, then sample Jool's atmosphere and hopefully get back to the mothership here. And with all that being done, hopefully the lander will have gotten here, and then, well, either one of the survivors or the one that didn't do all those fun things gets to land on Vol, plant the flag, and do the monumental science there. What we don't have in the Julian system is any mining equipment, so the fuel that we have brought, that is currently at a little bit under 1500 units, will have to suffice to do all of these things. The unmanned lander is bringing some fuel as well, but it's not going to have too much left over, so we're going to try and be frugal with our fuel and make smart orbital maneuvers so as not to waste needlessly much. So we're more than halfway through this insertion capture burn. We are already captured, in fact. We are now just working on decreasing our periapsis so that it's at least in the neighborhood of Vol. We're going to put our apoapsis at the height of Vol's orbit. Then once we get around to it, we will change, fix our inclination, and set up an encounter. I will fast forward that for you, and you will see me when I've actually set up this encounter, because watching the station burn, pretty sight as though it is, can get tedious. So I will see you in a bit. So here we are, not quite at Vol yet, but doing another burn. This is a plane change, inclination change maneuver, because I've been having trouble matching orbits with Vol. I've spent 2 or 3 orbits going there, and every time I make a maneuver node at apoapsis, I cannot seem to get an encounter. So it's a little bit difficult. I'm probably out of step with it, and this ratio of orbits is not good enough. So I am going to match the inclination and then try again. Change the shape of the orbit a little bit, try again. One thing I've been wondering while trying to get this this encounter, and maybe one of you watchers can help me out there, because I'm not sure I have the solution. What I did coming in from interplanetary space was to put my apoapsis rather low, about 7,000 kilometers near Jool, then break there, get into orbit, and put the apoapsis at Vol's orbit. So far sounds pretty efficient. Then, now what I'm going to do is, when I'm at apoapsis, I'm going to raise that periapsis, which I basically could have put anywhere for free coming from interplanetary space, anyway, for free for like less than a few tens of meters per second of delta V. Now I'm going to raise that back out to Vol's height, which is a sizable expenditure of delta V. Now, would it have been better had I come in from interplanetary space, put the periapsis at Val's altitude and then captured from there. That would have meant that that capture burn would have cost me more meters per second of delta V, because it is less effective because of a reduced Oberth effect from not being so near Jool. But it would have eliminated one of the secondary burns, or at least reduced its magnitude a lot. So I'm wondering if that approach would have been more efficient, and if so, by how much. And my intuition is failing to give me an answer here, and I'm not prepared to do the math because I don't care that much. But if any of you know, please feel free to enlighten me. I would appreciate that, because I was going on about making smart orbital maneuvers to save fuel, and then if I just throw away a kilometer per second, that is not very smart. Anyway, it's too late to do anything about it now. We have matched inclinations with Val, and hopefully next pass around that means I am going to get an encounter with our favorite little moon, and that does look promising. Does that look promising? I'm not quite sure. Does that maybe mean we should wait another orbit? No, here we go. This should make an encounter, yes. Definitely, there we go, 60,000 kilometers. That's another 900 meters per second. And my capture burn was also 900. That was very cheap, I felt. Just a 900 meters per second burn for a capture into Jool's orbit. But now expending another 900 to get into this orbit, that's about 1800 in total. I wonder if we could have done that for less, and as I said, I don't know the answer to that. A 900 meters per second burn will take a long time, so I'm not going to show you that at all. I'm just going to skip over it, and hopefully I will see you when we are around Val. So see you in a little bit. Look at that, the space station, or we should call it the ship now, in Val's sphere of influence, with a periapsis of 50 kilometers, so that's pretty well aimed. I know I said I was going to aim for a higher periapsis, but as you remember, doing burns close to the surface is more efficient, so we're going to leave this one rather high up, just at the scanning limit of the ketane scanner at 1250 kilometers. I'm going to leave that fairly high, 1124, why not? And the periapsis rather low. Should present a challenge for any vessels that are trying to be docked there. Look at that, there's so many celestials in view here. There's the sun, there is Val, there is Jool, and I think that's Lathe. So the Jool system truly does offer some pretty nice views every now and then. But we are approaching our burn point at 1 hour and 56 minutes. I just wanted to show you this site and that we actually made it to Val. I will see you again when we are in a stable orbit around it. So see you in a bit. Look, pretty stuff. And if we don't move the camera, it's not apparent that we are horribly lagging. So see you. So that's the engines firing for, well, the last time in the foreseeable future. Orbital changes notwithstanding, the ship is where we want it to be. Drumroll please. We are in orbit around Val. Right, with that over with, we can move into the more important things, activating everything we have on this ship. So Navgal gets to go away and we can finally come out of cruising mode. We are where we want to be. That means we are going to extend the solar panels, activate the kethane detectors. I know I only need the one, but we have two, so I'm going to activate both of them. 2 solar panels is never enough, so all the panels here on the center module get to be extended as well. I think I did have some, yeah, there we go. It's hard to see because we are in the shade of ourself. We have such a massive spacecraft. It is shading it's obstructing our view of it. Isn't that magnificent? Anyway, with all these panels extended, power will have been guaranteed forever, basically. And so far I am going to leave. No, I'm going to extend these panels as well, because more panels, more happiness. And I figure Bob and Bill are going to want to phone home to share some science results. Let's have a look at that. Now that I said I'm going to extend all the panels, I'm going to do it as well, so bear with me while I try and find any unemployed, undeployed, well, also unemployed because I'm not employing them when they're not deployed. Language god that I am. Isn't it wonderful? Deploying this panel here, and I think I put one on the other side as well. We require a lot of panels because we are far away from the sun. Look at how small it is. And of course, for that reason, we also brought some batteries. Here's another bank of panels. That's the last one I'm going to mess with. The last set, of course. Here we are. All the panels deployed. Wait, this one not. All the panels deployed. That's what I was saying. Great. Throttle off. That was off. And first thing, of course, is we are going to ask our crew for a report. Because we couldn't do that before. Crew report. The moon is mostly white in lighter blue shades. It looks very cold and possibly frozen. Great. Send that on home. And ask the same of our other crew. And one thing we have never done before in the Julian sphere of influence is to get an EVA report. Bill gets to go out in his spacesuit and he can tell us whether... Oh, don't let go. He can tell us whether space here feels the same or not. So take an EVA report, please. Stoic Bill just records his observations about the situation. 72 science points. That's great. And we are of course going to ask the same about Bob. Bob, how does it feel outside? Ooh, he's almost decapitated by one of these panels. Don't let go. You as well. Give us the EVA report, please. In space near Vol. Going to keep that data. Get back in there, and now we can choose to transmit that. Because in this vessel, of course, we have transmitters, which they don't have in their spacesuits. Review the stored data, transmit that home. You can see the big antennae deploying here, need high gain to transmit anything from here. Fortunately, we have enough of these antennas so that we can transmit multiple science readings at once. We can of course also do the materials bay. 225 points, great. We are doing groundbreaking science here in our, well, let's call it the science station, because why isn't it? Or why wouldn't we? Because it is. Wow. And we can transmit to mystery goo observations. Wonderful, 90 points. Also wonderful, another 90 points. Then of course we have the graviolis. And I think we did that already with a probe. But apparently not. Oh, we did it from a distance. Now we are doing it from near Vol, so that's even better. A lot of points here. Do that twice as we do with everything else, and we are raking in those points. That is great news. And meanwhile we can check. We are definitely scanning for kethane here, which is also good. I think this will be it for today. Bask in the glory of our ship, floating over Vol, doing the science, making everyone at home very, very happy indeed. As I can see here, there are some interesting landing zones. Resembles Minmus a little bit. Some flat areas punctuated by mountain ridges. We are going to find a nice kethane-rich place, plant a flag there, and prepare our settlement, or at least the plans for the settlement. Let's see if we cannot find the lander that's on its way. Should be here relatively shortly. That's here, and that will be there in about 30 days. So we have plenty of time to do some Jool system activities with this lander. Let's see, we have fuel to spare to put into this. That shouldn't be a problem. We can fill this up and send it on its way. And of course we have plenty of fuel for the ion-powered probe. For now the space station doesn't need to go anywhere, so that is nice. Tomorrow we're going to play with these things, but for today I was Lorenzo. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you tomorrow. Goodbye.